Okay, we are live on YouTube and Facebook. I don't know why I wanted to say Instagram. That would have been wild.
Live on IG. Who doesn't want to go live on IG? But anyways, welcome everybody. This is the Pistons Talk Podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Lance Caparosi. Follow me on Twitter at Lance Caparosi. I promise you, I am worth it. Seriously, I am. My co-host is Anthony. You can follow him at Pistons Talk on Twitter and across all social media platforms if you haven't already. He built the brand. I just hitched my wagon to it. But anyways, let's get this started. So in 1980, the Detroit Pistons finished the season 16-66, the worst season they've ever had. The Pistons currently right now have 15 wins. There are 14 games left. What are the odds or what are the chance that the Detroit Pistons remain at 15 wins?
I want to cheat and look at the schedule real quick because I'm not being prepared right now, and I do apologize for that. And I kind of just want to see what our schedule looks like.
The Pistons are the favorites in none of these games.
Let's see. So Pacers, Wizards, Nuggets, Heat, Hawks, Raptors, Bucks, Thunder, Rockets. I feel like our next win is gonna be at Thunder and at Rockets because I have a feeling like OKC is just gonna throw out some G Leaguers out there, and the Rockets will just be the Rockets. But I think we can at least get 17 wins. Everything else is probably a loss.
That was going to be my next question. How many more wins do you see out of the remaining 14? I was going to say 3. There was a part of me that said 4, and I just, had to talk myself off that cliff because there's no way they win 4 games. There's no way. So I would say 2 to 3. I lean more 2.
Yeah, it's just it seems like every other day, like someone's out for the season. Like you had Hamadou out with the ankle sprain, then you had Isaiah Stewart out, which I thought he had hip soreness, but then it turned into shoulder soreness all of a sudden. It's kind of like, shoulder soreness for the rest of the season. But I mean, then he got bogey too with his Achilles, which he said, my Achilles hurt, so Casey plays him like freaking 40 minutes, and then we haven't seen him since then. So it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know who's even going to be out there next game. Like, they might decide to shut down Jaden Ivey. Like, who knows?
He is out. I think Keith Langlis had tweeted out that he's out for Monday as well. I think that's a game.
Yeah, it was like a non-COVID illness or something like that. I don't know. It's just like this time of year, I kind of don't buy the injury report because I kind of look at the Tankathon standings and I'm like, yeah, you're not injured.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you because now the Detroit Pistons they can't go any lower than 5 in the draft. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to, the bright move would probably just to remain in that space, right? So you're going to sit a lot of guys, and that's what sucks. We're going to talk injuries later on the podcast, but Bogey's probably, do you even see him playing any more games during the rest of the season?
Probably not, no. Yeah. It would be pointless because obviously they want those players to go healthy into the summer. You don't want to have them to have a freak injury. Like, let's say he ruptured his Achilles. Like, you don't want that because he is 34. He'll be 34 next season, so he is getting up there. But I don't know, man. Like, if they do break the record of, like, that would be the worst in franchise history. Like, yeah, you got to go back, like, damn near 30, 40 years. Like, I didn't think they'd even be close to, touching this record, but here we are.
Yeah, no, right here on the cusp. But like we both said, they're going to get 2 more wins. It'll be a 17-win season. But Jalen Duren and his ceiling, let's talk about this because he put on some post moves the other night and he looked damn good. Looked way better than a G Leaguer like I thought at the beginning of the year. Made me eat my own words within like the first 5 minutes that he played during the regular season. But Jalen Duren, what is his ceiling as a player? I still believe he's Dwight Howard, but you have a different name that you want to drop. So who's that other name?
So I think if he hits his peak and he develops like we think he can, I think it's Dwight Howard. But as of right now, the way he's playing, it's Andre Drummond. There's so much similarities in Jalen Duren and Andre Drummond. And I know I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this. I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers because a lot of Pistons fans, when they hear that name, they cringe a little bit. But I think people forget how great Dwight Howard was in Orlando during his rookie year and all the way through his Orlando days. I don't think he's there yet. I don't think he has the post moves of a Dwight Howard yet. I think he's still in that Andre Drummond-esque type of mold right now. But I do think he's got the jump shot going for him. I think he's a great passer. I mean, I think defensively sometimes he does get lost, but hey, he's a rookie. As his ceiling right now, I would say it's Andre Drummond, but if he hits it, it's Dwight Howard.
Well, what parts of his game remind you of Andre Drummond? Because I think the biggest difference is just the motor of Jalen Duren. I don't really remember Dwight Howard his rookie year and like what his motor was like, but I know he obviously a very great rebounder, but there's just a different energy that Jalen Duren plays with. He plays with a little bit of hustle. You know, he really works for it, and he really has a nose for the ball when it comes to rebounding. But what other parts of his game remind you of Andre Drummond?
I think just the way they're playing right now, like Andre Drummond was a very good player in his time in Detroit, and he made 2 All-Star teams, which, you know, I think some fans are like, yeah, who gives a shit, you know?
Yeah.
But it's still an accomplishment. I think he's not the rebounder Drummond was. Like Drummond's like first and second and third step, he was grabbing rebounds. Yeah. He's not to that point yet, but I think there's a lot of similarities in their play style. Now, I'm talking about like rookie Andre Drummond before the coaching staff kind of ruined his mentality. Rookie Andre Drummond was swatting shots. He was, you know, basically going for every loose ball. It seemed like, you know, pickpocketing Dwayne Wade a couple times. Like, he was a good player, but I think that's where Duren's at right now. I don't think that's where he's going to finish his career at. I think, like you said, you see him as more of a Dwight Howard type, but just of what I've seen as of late, I think he's at that Andre Drummond tier, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as a rookie, that's pretty damn good.
Is it fair to say that that Jalen Duren compares to Dwight Howard, but I don't think he'll be that good of a defensive player? Because like Dwight Howard, even though he didn't make the top 75 players list, I think he's one of the 75 greatest players. He was amazing in his prime in Orlando defensively, like just incredible. I don't think Jalen Duren's ceiling is that high defensively, and I think it's unfair to put that on him. But it's just the body type, the power he dunks with, the way he moves at that size. Those are the things that remind me of Dwight Howard. Just how good of an athlete he is, and just how strong he is, and how he can bully people around and push them out of the way to get an open shot. Like, even if he didn't develop a mid-range jumper, he would still be dominant in the post. Like, I mean, he's still going to get you like 18 to 22, I feel like, at his ceiling, just playing with inside, 3 feet. I think Jalen Duren is just going to be amazing. It's just hard for me to say how good he's going to be defensively, even though I think he's going to be intimidating people to drive down there. I just don't know if he's going to win that many defensive player of the years. So I'm not going to say that, but there are some similarities to Dwight Howard. At least that's what I see when I watch him play.
Yeah, I mean, there was a clip of him, like you said last night, where, he was in the post and he had a really nice move. And I think that's where, he can really, eat. I think he's shown us, a post fadeaway. He's shown us that he can hit the jumper. I think mid-range, I think, is something where I'd like to see him improve a little bit this summer. That's where I want him to work. But I think as a prospect, I think there's a lot of potential there. And if he does untap what's there, you're looking at a potential top 10 center in the league, in my opinion.
Well, I'll say top 5 if he reaches that ceiling. I'll put it on him. Top 5.
Okay.
Who had a better move last night? Jalen Duren in the post or Isaiah Livers, pump fake, sidestep, drains the 3?
I'd probably give it to Livers just because we didn't really see that too much. Like on the Detroit Pistons night, you saw a little bit in Michigan. But we'll talk about Isaiah Livers later in the podcast because he's just taken, that opportunity and kind of ran with it. He's been putting up some really good games, and I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, I think he had like 20 shots the other night, career high for him in shots. That was cool. Let's talk about this. I believe Wes Davenport actually talked about this on Twitter, and it's about either a Killian Hayes or a new backup point guard in Detroit. Mm-hmm. I'm in favor of a new backup point guard in Detroit. I'll still root for Killian while he's a Piston, I was hoping he could get 20 assists the other night because he had 9 in the third quarter with 13 going into the fourth. And I thought, man, dude, if you just let him play and just let him go for it, that'd be such a cool little blimp on his career, just a 20 assist game. Didn't happen though. So I'll still root for him in Detroit Pistons uniform, but I'd rather have him go to a new team and then maybe find success over there. But what about you? New backup point guard or Killian Hayes next season?
I think Killian Hayes will be on this team next season, and I think he'll be your backup point guard.
Okay.
I just think, he's got another year left on his rookie contract, I believe. Might as well just play it out. If you want to go out and sign another veteran point guard, as long as Corey Joseph is not on this basketball team, God forbid, I swear I will punch a freaking wall. I don't think I can just suffer. I'm not even going to go down that road. It's just negative energy.
Yeah.
Not going to go down that road. I think Killian Hayes will be the backup point guard next season for the Detroit Pistons. I think that is going to be his ceiling in the NBA. He's just always going to be a backup point guard, and that's perfectly okay. I know some fans look at that 7th overall draft pick and they kind of get pissed off, but Marcus Smart was the 6th overall draft pick, and he's a backup for the Celtics. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Okay, so what about after his rookie year? Would you want them to re-sign him, or would you rather have them find a backup point guard? Not his rookie year, his rookie contract. You know what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of want to see what happens next year. And if he has games where he's just basically on and off, then yeah, it's time to move on. But I got to give a shout out to Dwayne Casey for like kind of calling him out. Like he called him out, saying like, "Hey, you need to be more aggressive. You quit like trying to get everyone else involved. Like look for your shot. Be more aggressive." Like he needs to be motivated, obviously, because he's just been so passive. And I was just like, dude, like you need to be the aggressor out there. You're the backup point guard. You need to be looking for your shots. You need to be more selfish and not be so, kind of passive when you're out there, because most nights it's 4-on-5. I can't have you have 1 point a game or, just get 1 point and like 3 assists and have 2 shots.
I think he was shooting 6% from 3 the other night. I think it was 6%. I don't know what he finished with, but I believe when I was watching on Bally Sports and I clicked the little Pistons icon and clicked Killian Hayes, 6% from 3.
Yeah, I mean,
it was bad.
He just needs to be aggressive, man. Because when he's aggressive, he's on. Like you said, he had a really good assist night. Like, and people are like, "Where is that every night?"
He had a double-double, and I loved the way I tweeted out. I loved his aggressive takes, taking it right at the rim, using his size, going right at the chest of a defender. But you don't see that enough from Killian. So you want to see him for one more season, just and see if he can finally figure it out, even though his role will probably always be a backup point guard.
Yeah, I feel like this season is probably the most progression we've seen out of him since he's been drafted. I think we can both agree there.
It was for a short moment, though. It was just for what, like
a month?
Yeah, and it was an awesome month. I was rooting for him. I picked him up in fantasy. Then I dropped him, but which was stupid because I should have rode that month out. But anyways, yeah, he was playing great, and then he just falls off. And it makes you wonder: is it because Jaden Ivey took over as a lead guard and he developed a lot faster than we thought? Is that because if that's the case, then who can Killian play with? Then I don't know. I mean, then can you not play him with Ivey and Cade Cunningham if he plays like crap when he's out on the floor with them? What do you think was the case? Just because? I don't know. Maybe it was just Killian. He finally got to be the lead guard again, but he's not going to be the lead guard in Detroit. He has to figure something out to find success.
Yeah, man. I mean, like Casey said it. He was like, Killian was kind of like watching Ivy be the lead guard and kind of like just letting him do his thing. And Casey's like, I can't have that. Like, we can't have that. We need you to be aggressive out there. Like, Ivy will get his and you'll get yours. You just have to, keep staying the course and being aggressive. And I think what Casey said is 100% true. Killian kind of just, was in the passenger seat letting Ivy drive it. And it's just like, what's that?
No, go on. My bad.
No, it's just, I think for him to be on this team and have a role, and to your point, like, can he play with Cade and Ivy? He has to be aggressive. He has to look for that mid-range shot. He has to take it to the hole more often. Shoot 3-point shots because that's the only way you're going to get better. You're not going to get better being passive and passing it to everybody else.
And it's kind of crazy because Ivy and Cade have those games that cater to Killian in pinches, where you really we talked about this a long time ago, that if you drafted Jaden Ivey, you could play all three of them on the court together. But Killian is such a minus when he's with them. You can't play all three of them together. But Jaden Ivey's developing that outside shot as a catch and shoot player. I mean, he was shooting 40%, right, for 1 month or somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And then Cade, I mean, he hasn't really shot the greatest from 3-point, but we've seen the shot. We saw it in college. We know it's going to drop eventually. So Killian, if he was just aggressive going to the hole, it would open up lanes for him to pass it to those two guys, and they could all play off of each other. But it doesn't seem like Killian – I know I sound pretty harsh, but it just doesn't seem like he's ever going to figure it out. Or if he does, it's just going to be, maybe so sporadic, here and there. It's not going to be consistent. So, but let's just say they do look for a new backup point guard. Do you think they look for a backup point guard in the mold of like Cade Cunningham, where they're more of, slow and more methodical and they wait for things to develop, or someone more aggressive like Ivy, always looking to attack and put pressure on the defense?
I want to check if this guy's a free agent, because if he is, I'd be all on board bringing him. Let me check his contract real quick. And I did not spell his last name right. And it's a really basic last name. Hold on, this is really bad podcasting. I do apologize for this.
No, it's all good.
And the player, no, he's not a free agent. Screw me. It was Tyus Jones I was thinking about. That's kind of the type of backup point guard I would look at. I don't know if you're too familiar with his game. He's, I have him in fantasy right now because of the John Morant stuff, and he's been cooking. But
yeah, no, he's solid.
I think that's kind of like that mold of a backup point guard you're looking for. Just kind of a guy out there to initiate the offense and be aggressive at the same time. To your point, though, like, do you want it to be kind of like a Cade Cunningham type or a Jaden Ivey type? I think those type of backup point guards cost a lot.
Well, I was thinking like Ty Jerome. He's like 6'5", 6'6". He's not super athletic, decent shooter, but he doesn't turn the ball over a lot. I don't think he even averages one a game in Golden State. Now, he doesn't play a ton of minutes, but I'm thinking somewhere more like that, like a bigger guard, kind of like Killian Hayes too, in that 6'4", 6'5" range. Longer wingspan, maybe a bigger body, not super athletic, but can get to the hole or shoot from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think of Ish Smith from years ago. Kind of like that type of backup point guard. Like, if you want to go and target one, and if Troy just says, you know what, enough's enough, you've had 3 years and you still haven't figured it out, then yeah, go after like backup point guards like that. But I mean, if it was me, I would just wait one more year. Like, it's not going to hurt anything. He's still under contract.
All right, we spent like 8 minutes on Killian Hayes, which almost seems impossible to do by the way he plays, but we do it almost every podcast. It's incredible. Sure. Let's talk about Eugene. Okay. Rui, dude, does he have a future with the Detroit Pistons? I love this dude's game. I love the number 97. I love the way he plays defense. I love his hustle. I love his effort. I love that play he made where he caught it and did like this gliding Euro step and then finished it on the fast. It was beautiful. I love Eugene. I want him to be in Detroit. Maybe it's because there haven't been too many bright spots this season. But what about you? How do you feel about Eugene Amarui and his chances with the Detroit Pistons?
I think if we had him in the beginning of the year, we'd have more wins.
Ooh, wow. That is a great take.
Just because, like, you look at him, dude, he's like a junkyard dog out there. Like, he's doing all the dirty stuff that you don't want to do. Like, he's taking the charges. He's scrappy defensively, like we said last week when we were telling people about him, like what to expect out of him. He's just one of those glue guys that every team needs. And, Casey, said today after a shoot around that he's like, I hope the guy gets another 10-day because he's just played his ass off. He deserves it. He's like, but I don't make those decisions, so I don't know. But to me, I think he does have a future with the Detroit Pistons. I think he's one of those kind of 3-and-D guys, 3-and-D wings that we've been talking about, it seems like for the past like 2 months of like what the Pistons need to go out this summer and get. Imagine if you have 3, Eugene Amaruis on your team. You're talking about a team that could flirt with the play-in. But I love the kid's spark. I love his energy. I love that, he's just, the aggressive guy out there that will, play defense. And we haven't seen a whole lot of defense this year. But I like him a lot, man. I think he was a solid 10-day pickup, and I got to give a shout out to Troy Weaver for signing him.
Dude, I hope they get it. Monday will be his last day. And I don't know if he would be able to play in the game or do you have to re-sign, but I hope they extend him for the rest of the season. Like, screw a 10-day. Give him a chance for the rest of the year and just let him play minutes. Like, dude, I put him in kind of the Hami role, but he has a way better jump shot. But just that, like that junkyard dog, that high energy, that there's something about the way they play that's contagious and it affects the entire team. Just I love guys like this, and I just want to see Eugene Amarui make it, man. I hope it's in Detroit. I mean, that's the type of player you want, just the way he plays. Like, that's the epitome of what being a Detroit Piston is, or at least that's what they told us it was. Give him a chance, man. Give him a chance. So let's move on to news.
For sure. I mean, I know a lot of fans are saying like he could be our Draymond Green.
You can't do that. Not yet, but that's cool though. I'm glad people have high expectations of him, but I was thinking just more of like an 8th man playing like, 15 minutes a night and just going all hard for 15 minutes,
Yeah, I mean, I love his energy, man. Like it's so infectious. Haven't seen a wing defend like that probably since, dare I say, Tayshaun.
Whew. Man, you are dropping some takes tonight. All right, so news. The Detroit Pistons are considering taking precautionary measures to manage Bojan's health and could shut him down for the remainder of the season. This comes from Shams Charania. Dude, we were talking about this earlier. I texted you earlier in the week. Do I drop him in fantasy? You said probably. Not a good enough answer. We should talk about it now. I have him on IR. I'm thinking about dropping him, but do you really think they shut down Bojan for the rest of the season?
I do. Bojan did talk about it, I believe, a week ago in his presser after the game, saying that, like, he had a calf injury that was really bad and, he kind of ignored it. And then he was out for several months. This is Achilles, and you don't really want to mess with Achilles because, we all know how long an Achilles rupture can have you out. I think the Pistons should be safe. They invested a lot into Bojan going into next season. And I think the Pistons would tell you, hey, we want everyone going into next summer, or I should say this summer, healthy. We don't want them in a cast. So I think they are going to shut him down. I think this gives you more time for Isaiah Livers, gives more time for Eugene Amarui, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of injuries. Let's go through them. There's Bojan, Isaiah Stewart, Marvin Bagley's now out. Who else is out for injury? Hami, yeah. So that's it. It feels like there's so much more. They feel like they're really thin everywhere other than in the backcourt. So I don't know. There's a lot of injuries. There's a part of me that thinks that the Pistons are just holding all these guys out because they want that top 5 spot still in the draft.
Well, it's March.
Yeah.
It's March basketball.
Still.
The injury reports, they have more people on the injury report than they have wins.
True. Ivy's also there on the injury report for the next game. So
yeah,
we were missing. Dude, I just wish they could say it. Like, yeah, dude, look, we want a chance at the big fella. That's what we want. We're going to sit all these guys and we're going to cross our fingers. And, that's what we want. We want the big fella. Chauncey Billups, the Detroit Pistons legend, believes the Detroit Pistons are building the team the right way. So what is building the team the right way? Is it just building it through the draft and having it organic? Is that what they mean?
Yeah, so he had Mike Curtis caught up with him when we played the Blazers this week and kind of asked him, like, what do you think of how the Pistons are doing? He's like, I don't like them to see them struggle, but I always keep an eye out to see what they're doing. And he kind of tipped his hat to Dwayne Casey and Troy Weaver of, building this team the right way through the draft. And he's like, it's like I'm coaching young guys too. He's like, I'm coaching, an Anthony Simons, a Shaden Sharp. He's like, so I get what they're going through, trying to, prepare these guys not only for like the NBA, but for life, like teaching these guys of like what to do and what not to do on and off the court. So, Chauncey did, tip his cap to Troy and say, they're going to be really good in a few seasons. Like they're going to be a powerhouse. So that was really nice to hear Chauncey say that. And then I know fans are going to be like, wish he was the coach.
Yeah, I just want to see how he does in Portland before I, say anything like that. So, yeah, I'm glad people are recognizing the job that Troy Weaver's done. It's nice to know that not only just former Pistons, but like former NBA players and people in the NBA are recognizing what Troy Weaver does, despite, him not getting like any or enough credit from the national media for what he's doing here. So yeah, kudos to Chauncey Billups, man. Restricted free agent Cam Johnson is seeking $18 million. That doesn't seem like enough per season. Are we willing to give him that much? Hell yeah, because that seems like a steal. Even though he probably will never play 82 games in a season. I mean, you're paying $18 million a year for what, 65 games, maybe somewhere around there. Not bad. What about you? $18 million enough for Cam Johnson?
I'm all in. Like, he is the wing that he's like number one on my list. Like, if I'm a Piston fan and I'm looking at, small forwards or power forwards, because he's played both, honestly, but he's played more power forward as of late. He's a guy to me that just fits seamlessly with Katie Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. Like, if you had a tandem of Bojan and Cam Johnson as your wings, you 3-4s, and you got Kate out there with Jaden Ivey, like, you're splashing threes all day.
Yeah.
Like, straight up. Like, I love Cam Johnson. He's versatile, can play 3 and 4. Now, is he a lockdown defender? No, but he's above average. He's a way better defender than Bojan is. And that he's a guy that I wanted him in the draft over Sekou. I had to say it. I wanted Cam Johnson over Sekou Doumbouya so bad. And the Suns reached for him so much. Like, I think he went like 7th or 8th or something crazy like that.
Yeah, it's crazy because he was a lot older of a prospect too. Because he's 27 or 28 years old right now.
He's older than Jeremy Grant.
I gotta see this real quick. I have it pulled up.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. He's 27. Well, he's 27 years old right now. He's from a place called Moon Township. Wow. Anyways, yeah, Cam Johnson though. It would be really cool to see Ivy, Cade, Isaiah Livers, because he's on the team right now. Cam Johnson, and then Jalen Durden or James Wiseman or Marvin Bagley or Isaiah Stewart in at the 5. Oh my God. Could you imagine the spacing if you had Isaiah Stewart in there for Ivy? You just had played 5 out. that just is, yeah, that would be crazy with a guy like Cam Johnson. I mean, I guess you could do that with Bojan right now. And you're right. He's not a great defender, but as the team gets better defensively, he's going to look better defensively. Like that's, he's not a liability out there. Like, you don't want to put him on an island too much, but he can hold his own out on the perimeter. So
yeah, like Johnson. When I saw the 18 mil, I was like, dude, that's kind of cheap.
Yeah, why would he? I can't believe that's all he's asking for. Doesn't he know to always start high?
Yeah, I mean, like, I saw shout out to Koo, who does Lockdown Pistons. He had said, "It's like, shit, I'd give him 22 mil." Just because he's just such a great knockdown shooter. Like, he shoots at a high volume, damn near 6 threes a game. And I think he's at like 36 or 37%. I mean, if you're not too familiar with his game, you just know that he's a sharpshooter and he plays in between a small forward and a power forward. Like I said, he's the top of my list this free agency. Like, if we don't get like a star, kind of get like that B- player, to me, he would be that B- player that I would be comfortable giving the bag to.
So in 17 games for Phoenix this year, he attempted 5.83. So let's round up to 6. And he shot 45.5%, 46% from 3 on 6 attempts. Now, right now, on 8 attempts, he's shooting 34% for Brooklyn, but he's also playing 29 minutes per game, 4 more minutes than he was in Phoenix, but he's also averaging career highs at 17 points per game. So he's doing a little bit more higher, Just he's doing a little bit more offensively. He's taking a few more shots per game all over the floor. But I still love Cam Johnson at 18 million. Like I said, that seems like a steal. This is the injury. That's the hardest thing because he played 57, 60, and 66 games his first 3 years, 28 games last year. Oh, no, 28 games this year. That's how much he's played. There's 14 games left, so he might play 42. So, we'll see if he can be healthy. But 18 million, yeah, it's a great price for Cam Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in, man. Like, I think I told you maybe 2 podcasts ago, if the Pistons don't get like a big fish, like give me Cam Johnson just because he's just so underrated and people don't talk about him enough.
Yeah, no, 100%. Bally Sports, they did an all-time Detroit Pistons team. Their lineup was Isaiah Thomas, Dave Bing, Joe Dumars. Really, Joe Dumars at the 3? That's weird. Bob Lanier and then Ben Wallace. That's a terrible starting 5 for the all-time.
Bro, when I saw it, dude, I laughed. I was like, you can't be serious right now.
Dude, talk about trying to not hurt anybody's feelings. Making an all-time team. That's just, no, I'm sorry. That's a terrible team. You can't, I feel like if you're going with either Isaiah Thomas or Chauncey Billups at your point guard, you have to either go with Rip Hamilton or Joe Dumars. I feel like Joe Dumars and Rip Hamilton fit together either with Isaiah Thomas or Chauncey Billups, but you have to have 2 of those 4 players in your backcourt for an all-time Pistons team.
Yeah, I mean, I think my all-time Pistons team, and people like, dude, that team's not scoring over 60 points. I had Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Grant Hill, I think Dennis Rodman, and Ben Wallace.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm stocking up on defense, and if Grant Hill's just gonna kind of be like a ball handler with Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, so we might not score a lot, but we're locking your ass down.
So I would go Isaiah Thomas, Rip Hamilton. I know it seems crazy, but I want someone just killing it from the mid-range, like that can just run nonstop. I do like Joe Dumars, like I just said, and I've debated because if I go Chauncey Billups at the point guard, I get great 3-point shooting, and then I could put a lockdown defender like Joe Dumars, and that would just be a nasty backcourt. But then I'm going Grant Hill at the 3 because I think you have to, no matter what. He's the most talented player. Well, let me ask you this. Is Blake Griffin the most talented player to ever wear a Pistons uniform? Just talent-wise. Not the best Piston, just the most talented player to wear a Pistons jersey.
Nah, it could be a sicko and say Allen Iverson or Tracy McGrady.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could say that. Like you could say definitely Tracy McGrady and Allen Iverson was an MVP. But like Blake Griffin. I don't know. I was thinking about that.
I mean, Blake would be up there in terms of like some of the best power forwards to ever wear a Pistons uniform. But I mean, you're going like all time. I mean, I feel like you'd have to mention him, but I mean, I got to go with Rodman, man. Like to me, I think Rodman could arguably play 1 through 5. Like it's insane. Like just
no, you're right.
His versatility.
I don't know. I'm just saying I wouldn't put Blake Griffin on my all-time team. I'm not saying that. I just think in terms of talent, because he did have he had a great season in Detroit. It was his best season ever. Just in terms of talent as a basketball player, I think he might arguably be the most talented player to ever wear a Pistons jersey. But let's go back to my all-time starting team. So I got Isaiah Thomas, Rip Hamilton, Grant Hill. I'm going to go Rasheed Wallace at power forward, then Ben Wallace at the 5. Just because I get a guy that can draw double teams. He can score on the blocks, can score from the outside, and he's just a menace defensively. And he would take a back seat to Isaiah Thomas and Grant Hill. He'd be that third fiddle offensively. Maybe even fourth because of Rip.
Yeah, it's funny. Some fans are like, what about Chris Webber? Chris Webber was more talented than Blake, which I would 100% agree with. But
that's a great name.
Yeah, I mean, we've had it's kind of funny how like Pistons, they've signed like a lot of guys that were like good players in their prime, but like, when they're past their prime, they come here. Like I think of Derrick Rose a little bit.
So what do you think who do you think would win, a Detroit Pistons all-time starting 5 or a team that was made up of Tracy McGrady, Allen Iverson. We'll throw Derrick Rose in there, Blake Griffin, and Chris Webber. I mean, if we say they're prime, that's probably everybody would probably pick that team. But dude, that's a nasty team. That's a nasty team.
You're giving so many people so much PTSD with all those names that you just dropped.
Well, Allen Iverson, that was probably the oddest name, right? The oddest name in a Pistons uniform. I didn't like it. I felt like the Pistons should have traded Rip over Chauncey. Because Chauncey, I mean, he was still an all-star when he went to Denver. And he got the Western Conference Finals against a good Lakers team that won the championship.
I don't know, man. Like, I saw a comment, and it's like I just saw that name, and I haven't heard that name in probably like 10 years. Walter Herman.
Oh, great name.
Pistons would probably win that, to answer your question all day. Okay. All those guys you mentioned are ball hogs.
Chris Webber was pretty. He liked to pass it.
Call timeouts too.
The wrong he did. Let's talk about this mock draft coming up.
For sure. That's what people are here for, the mock draft.
Who doesn't want to talk about it? KOC had the Pistons drafting Brandon Miller. The pro comp is really interesting. Paul George and Trey Murphy III. I haven't watched a lot of Trey Murphy. I saw him in the dunk contest. I've seen a few highlights. You think that's pretty correct, Paul George and Trey Murphy?
I see more Danny Granger, but I could see where Kevin O'Connor says Trey Murphy and Paul George. I love the comp to Paul George, though. When you watch Brandon Miller play, you kind of see why a lot of, draft analysts and experts have him top 3. Just because he can do so much stuff on the basketball court at that forward position that it's elite. Like, if he just puts it all together, man, like he could be one of those small forwards that we look back where we'd be like, how did Brandon Miller fall to 3? Because he's just that talented, man. Like, being able to shoot at a high volume from 3. His handle has gotten a lot better. His playmaking has got a lot better as of late. Like, that was actually a weakness a few months ago. It's actually a strength now. I'm not going to say he's like a lockdown defender, but he's above average. He's just a guy that I want a lot, but I'm not going to say I want him over Victor Wembanyama because I don't. That would be foolish. I think everybody wants Victor. Between Pistons, Rockets fans, and Spurs fans, we all want Victor. But there's a conversation right now among Pistons fans. Who do you want, Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson?
So do you think it's fair that all of the big media outlets are picking Brandon Miller to go to Detroit? Well, at least it seems that way.
I think it's just because of fit. And I think a lot of media companies, whether it's Yahoo, ESPN, whatever, they're like, well, Detroit has Killian Hayes, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Scoot Henderson. They're labeling as this generational type point guard. The Pistons could draft him. Let's say they do get the 2nd overall pick. I think most Pistons fans wouldn't be mad because some people are comping this guy to Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose, John Morant. All explosive point guards. But there are other media outlets that saying Brandon Miller fits like a glove for the Pistons, and I can completely understand why that they want Brandon Miller in Detroit.
Yeah, it's like I've already talked about it on this podcast before. With everything still going on with his personal issues, it's hard for me. But I mean, he's a very talented player. If I could look past all that, he's a very good basketball player, and he fits right in. Like, you could just see him making a cut off the wing and Cade or Ivy feeding him, and he just throws it down or makes another secondary pass to someone else, or he just, they put him on an island and he can go one-on-one. You could just see all that. Yeah, Brandon Miller, he would definitely be the pick. I just think it makes the most sense at 2. I did not agree with Sam Vecini. We'll get into that in a little bit, but
for sure.
Yeah, I think Brandon Miller, if everything's good off the court, he's the guy for the Pistons, whether it's 2 or 3.
I think one thing that I take a lot of stock in is Alabama being such a high ranked team
Yeah.
and going into March Madness. I think that matters. I'm not taking anything away from the G League because I think the G League has a lot of NBAers. Obviously, I do cover a lot of G League games, but I just think what Brandon Miller is doing is so special. And I said last week, I wouldn't be surprised come draft time that we start hearing Brandon Miller could be the second best player out of this draft class. Some people might kind of look at Scoot Henderson's numbers and saying, he's not that efficient from three. He might be the third best prospect out of this draft class. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I could see it kind of being like a Jabari Smith type of thing where, last year everyone's like, Jabari's the best player out of this draft class. Jabari should go one, and then he falls to three. You never really know what happens, during the NBA draft. And that could possibly happen. I don't know. I still think Scoot is the second best player out of this draft class. But I think Brandon Miller, fit-wise, makes the most sense for the Pistons. But you always do draft best player available in this situation.
What about this, though? Brandon Miller at 2, regardless if the Pistons are drafting there or not. Can you see another team taking him that high? Are we talking about him? Is the conversation Brandon Miller at number 2 for everybody, or just at number 2 because the Detroit Pistons are drafting at number 2?
I think it's dependent on who is the second team in the draft lottery.
Yeah.
But if the Pistons are at 2, there's a real conversation of drafting Brandon Miller over Scoot. I mean, it's a discussion. I don't know if they would do it. I think everything we know about Troy Weaver, he always talks about getting the person right, the player right.
Yep.
And I hate to say it, but people kind of bring up like the off the court stuff, even though legally he's fine. Like he's a free man as of right now. The draft was tomorrow; he'd be getting drafted.
Yeah.
We have to wait and see what happens with all the legal stuff. But as of right now, he's a free man. I still think they draft Scoot at 2. I do.
Ooh, okay.
But man, it could be a situation where they draft Scoot, doesn't work out, and Brandon Miller's balling, and Pistons fans are getting PTSD all over again.
I mean, it might be one of those things too where Brandon Miller, if it does go that way, let's just say they draft Scoot, but for somehow it works between him, Ivy, and Cade. Maybe they don't put up crazy individual numbers, but they win, and Brandon Miller's putting up crazy numbers. Whatever. Who cares if he's putting up great numbers on another team and if we're still winning in Detroit? But I don't know, man. I don't know if I see Troy Weaver going a guard for 4 years in a row, though. That would be tough.
Man. It's because then you get into the conversation of, do you trade Ivy?
Yep.
Because I saw a comment the other day, and it was like, well, in OKC, James Harden came off the bench, right?
Yeah.
While they had Russell Westbrook and KD. I think the biggest difference between that and what the Pistons have is the Pistons are loaded at guard. OKC wasn't really, stacked at the guard position at the time when, they were all young. I think that's the biggest difference, but I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I either want the first overall pick or the third overall pick. I don't want the second overall pick.
Yeah, the second overall pick it's so nerve-wracking. Yeah, but in Oklahoma City too, they had Thabo Sefolosha. I mean, you had to start him over James Harden. But I always thought Oklahoma City had it right. James Harden made the most sense between Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook because he can control the pace and he had good vision. He knew how to keep guys involved and he knew how to ride the hot hand. I always loved James Harden as that facilitator and lead guard for him. It just didn't work out in Oklahoma City because they didn't want to negotiate contracts with him. But I mean, I don't see Ivy working as a sixth man. I don't think that's his role in the NBA. I don't think it's Scoots. I mean, I think Cade has the personality where if you told him, hey man, we're going to need you to come off the bench, the team will win a championship, he'd probably do it. But I don't see him doing that in Detroit. So if you draft Scoot, you're saying you're probably looking at some point trading Jaden Ivey because I don't know how it works between all three of those guys. And then with everybody else on this team, all these other young players still developing, we don't know what we got in those guys. Because it seems like Bagley and James Wiseman, they're offensive machines. You can't have so many offensive players. I mean, someone's got to do something.
Yeah, I think that's why you see so many media outlets, mocking Brandon Miller in every mock, whether the Pistons are at 3 or 2. Just because fit-wise, it makes the most sense. Like, Brandon Miller doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective. Like, Scoot Henderson is a ball-dominant guard. Jaden Ivey's a ball-dominant guard. Cade Cunningham is a ball-dominant forward. There's one basketball. Unless you're going to, convince Cade, hey, play small forward and Ivy and Scoot are your point guard and shooting guard, maybe it could work. I don't know. That's next level thinking. But if you think it could work and just kind of figure it out later and see what happens, then yeah, I mean, you could try to do that. But I mean, like I said, I either want 1 or 3, man. I just don't want to.
Yeah, and I mean, even in positionless basketball, you really only want like 2 ball handlers out on the floor. Like, look at the Warriors. They have Draymond Green and they have Steph Curry. Klay Thompson comes off a lot of screens, moves without the ball. Dated back to even Harrison Barnes. He primarily played in the corner. And then you got Kevon Looney just doing whatever he does out on the floor and making a ton of money. He has the best life of everybody. Yeah, I don't know. Like, even with positionless basketball, it still doesn't make sense with 3 guards like Cade, Ivey, and Scoot Henderson. But I also think all these media outlets drafting Brandon Miller to Detroit are just taking the safe way. They don't want to be the people that talk about trading Ivey and pissing off a ton of people in Detroit. So they're just going to play it safe and say Brandon Miller.
For sure. I still think, I mean, I've even seen some discourse among some, Pistons fans is saying that they would take Osur over Brandon Miller, Osur Thompson from the Overtime Elite League.
Yeah.
Because he's starting to get some traction, which deservedly so. I think he's the better of the Thompson twins, in my opinion. I think he'll probably be a player where you look at him and you're like, okay, that guy's got 2-way potential. But we'll see, man. I mean, the draft is going to come up faster than we know because it's already March and we'll be drafting them by June. So I'm here for draft talk, man. I could talk draft all freaking night.
Oh, we will. But for me with the draft pick, give me a guy that can play day one that still has a lot of potential. I don't want a guy sitting on the bench and be like, oh, he might be a player a year or like a down the line. I don't want that. I want a guy that's ready to play. We've been spoiled these last 2 years, actually the last 3. Killian started day one. Cade started when he came back from injury. Jaden Ivey's been starting. Give me a rookie that starts. I need it now because we haven't had it in so long. But let's talk about Tyrese Halliburton, dude, on this Knuckleheads podcast.
For sure.
Almost a Detroit Piston, wanted to be a Detroit Piston. That was it. Always shocks me when players say they want to be a Detroit Piston because I feel like nobody ever gives a really great answer why. I mean, do players in the league, past and present, look at Detroit as like a great basketball city, like in terms of history, because they're one of the original, I believe they're one of the original leagues. One of the original teams, but because of the championship pedigree, 3 championships, some teams don't even have 1. It's just, I don't know. I want to know why people want to play in Detroit. Like, what draws them to it?
I think every situation is different. I think for Tyrese, at the time, you have to remember the only point guard really that was here was Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was right there at 7 if you wanted him. It's funny because like he's probably been asked this probably 2 times over probably the last 6 months. And he always likes to mention that, yeah, I really wanted to go to the Detroit Pistons. Like that was the one team that I wanted to go. He said, I didn't want to go to the Hawks. I didn't want to go to the Cavs. He's just like Detroit or New York would have been cool.
Someone dropping a comment or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fans are like, if we draft Tyrese, we don't have Cade. They kind of get into that thought process, which it's like, you don't really know that. You're just assuming. If you insert player A, he gets us more wins. But situation is everything.
Yep. So that's what I was going to ask. Do people mean that Tyrese Halliburton was so good as a rookie that the Pistons wouldn't have been in position to get the first pick? Or are they saying because of Tyrese Halliburton, Troy Weaver goes a different direction with the first pick?
I think it's more of they think Tyrese Halliburton is so good of a player that he would have played the Pistons out of the first overall pick, which I see a lot of discourse there among fans saying, like, yeah, we draft Tyrese, we don't get Cade. Which, hey, I mean, that is true. It could be, it could have been like Tyrese and Evan Mobley. Like, you never know. Like, it's just a revisionist history kind of thing where, like, people go back like, no, we wouldn't have, had, Cade. And some fans are even saying, Tyrese wasn't even a top 10 pick. I was just like, I don't know where you were looking at, but he was like top 6 all year.
Yeah.
And Killian, there were some mocks where Killian was going like late first. So that said, it was just kind of like a swing and miss. If I'm being honest.
Okay. Were you in Team Killian camp or Team Tyrese Halliburton camp?
I was Tyrese Halliburton camp.
I was Killian.
I can actually give you, I still have it. My top 4 point guards out of that draft. It was Tyrese, Cole Anthony, RJ Hampton, Killian Hayes.
Oh, where was LaMelo Ball?
I didn't think we were getting LaMelo.
Oh, okay. For where we were going. Okay. I got you.
Yeah. It's like I said, he was right there.
Yeah.
And the fact that he fell to the Kings is just wild to me. Cause I think to me, arguably he's the second best player out of the 2020 draft class. I think Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Halliburton are the 2 best players out of that 2020 draft class.
It's close between those two. If the Pistons had the number 1 overall pick and they had Tyrese Halliburton, he showed out his rookie year in Detroit. I still think Troy Weaver drafts Cade Cunningham because I think that's a great pairing in the backcourt between those two. I don't believe Troy Weaver goes Evan Mobley. I still think he wanted Marvin Bagley or James Wiseman, and he probably still saw a path to either one of those guys. But Cade, I think 99 out of 100 times he goes number 1 no matter what. It's an interesting, fun thing to talk about with Tyrese Halliburton in Detroit. I thought he was great his rookie year. I just don't know how much he moved the win, the needle in the win column in Detroit his rookie year because that team was pretty bad. Your best player was Jeremy Grant. You were riding the hot hand of Sadiq Bey for a little while. Mason Plumlee was playing point guard. It was a crazy time in Detroit during that Killian Hayes rookie year.
Yeah, I'm happy we have Cade Cunningham. I really am. But, man, could you imagine a Tyrese Halliburton and a Cade Cunningham backcourt?
Yeah, it'd be amazing. It'd be incredible.
Oh, my God. I remember when I was watching, I think it was All-Star game when they have, the rookies and the sophomores. And Tyrese was just lobbing to Isaiah Stewart, all night. I was like, oh, man, the chemistry's already there. Damn.
I would have loved it, man. It was either Tyrese Halliburton or Killian Hayes, but I leaned Killian Hayes towards the end. And I thought Tyrese Halliburton, I didn't think he would actually land to the Pistons at 7 because I thought most mocks had him going number 4 before Patrick Williams started to rise. I thought he was going to go to Chicago. So, man, it would have made sense in Chicago too. Him and Levine and DeMar. Damn. They'd be dominating the Central Division right now.
That's crazy, man.
What about this though? So Donovan Mitchell has the perfect workout in Detroit. Devin Booker's from Grand Rapids. He seems like he's always posting in his stories on Instagram about the Detroit Pistons, showing those Chauncey Billups and those going to work squad banners. Does that piss you off to have all these players wanting to play in Detroit?
It does. It really does. Even Carmelo Anthony, a few years ago when he was on All the Smoke with Chris Barnes and Steven Jackson, he said that the Detroit Pistons promised that they would draft him, and they didn't. Well, yeah. Like you said, Donovan Mitchell, the perfect workout, so I didn't miss a shot. And we draft Luke Kennard, who wasn't even some people didn't even think Luke Kennard would be a first-round draft pick, and we kind of reached for Luke Kennard. Devin Booker, I'll actually give a pass because I don't think anyone knew Devin Booker was going to be Devin Booker.
Yeah, he was a sixth man in college. I had no faith in Well, I shouldn't say I had no faith in Devin Booker, but I was like, man, dude, how are you going to be talked about as a top 8 pick? I completely forgot about Marvin Williams in North Carolina, where he was the number 2 pick as the 6th man for those Tar Heels teams. So I should have believed in Devin Booker. You're right. That one doesn't hurt as much, but I don't know, man. It still sucks to hear all that, man. A lot of these guys wanted to play here.
Yeah, I just hate that like our organization isn't like in touch with like what players like I'm not saying like, draft a player because they said they want to play for your team, but like, passing on Donovan Mitchell, who like again, arguably one of the best players out of his draft class, passing on Carmelo Anthony, and you promised him that you would draft him. Even Larry Brown said, yeah, we're drafting you, and they don't draft him because Joe Dumars was enamored with Darko. Like it just seems like we can't get away from it. It's kind of like the Pistons are turning into the Detroit Lions in a sense.
Man, they had a problem where they were drafting. Again, it's not bad drafting on potential, but give us a guy that can play right away.
Yeah.
It sucked watching Stanley Johnson. What was he, 8th overall? And he didn't start till like the 30th game of the season, maybe. And it was just because it felt like it was just because of injuries or whatever. I don't even know. It's such a mess at that time, man. Give the young guys a chance.
Yeah, honestly, man, it's just I hate to like kind of give people PTSD that are watching live or when you do listen to this podcast on Monday. But I mean, I just been thinking about it, man. It seems like every time there's like a star player or an above average player, they want to come here, and we're like, nah, we don't want you. We're gonna draft an international guy that's gonna take 7 years to develop,
and he won't be here in Detroit. Speaking of the draft, Sam Facini said the Pistons should draft Scoot Henderson and figured out later he compared the Pistons situation to the Philadelphia 76er drafting 3 centers in consecutive drafts until they hit on Joel Embiid. Yeah, we talked about this plenty of times. I don't know. Like, I don't draft Scoot Henderson just because he's there, because I think the Pistons are they're at the point where you can go best fit available. Now, if there were question marks about Ivy or question marks about Cade, yeah, draft Scoot Henderson. But there aren't any question marks about those two other than injury concerns. Like, Jaden Ivey looks like to be the real deal. He's developed quickly. Cade Cunningham, when he's been healthy and available, he's looked like the real deal. So, yeah, I think you can pass on Scoot Henderson and go a different direction, like we were talking about earlier, Brandon Miller or, Joris Walker if you slip, or Cam Whitmore or something. So, yeah, I don't agree with Sam on this. And the Pistons have already gone 3 guards in a row, and they hit it twice. They got lucky hitting it twice. Try another position, see if you hit somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, like, he was kind of just like probably replying to the article he had, because he did a piece with James Edwards, and they kind of were talking about like what do the Pistons do if they're at 2, and he's like, just draft Scoot. Like, you don't have a star. He's like, I like Cade, I like Ivy, but they're not stars, and like you just keep drafting until you get a star. He's like, that's what Philly did, and it's just like those Philly teams were so bad that they were just drafting top 5 every year, and they hit on Joel Embiid. Obviously, he's one of the best centers in the NBA. I mean, you could argue him and Jokic are 1 and 2. But I don't really like this thought process because, to your point, like you said, Pistons hit on Jaden Ivey. I think we can all agree Jaden Ivey has been one of the best players out of this draft class. I'm happy with it.
Why? I don't get this. This is just it just irritates me. How can you say Jaden Ivey or Cade Cunningham aren't stars? We're just at the beginning of their careers. You have to give them more time. What are you watching where you can sit there and confidently say that? I would like to know. Explain it. Maybe he did in the article. I didn't read it, but how can you say that right now about Cade Cunningham? We haven't even seen. He only played 17 games this year. And then he's been out ever since. And yeah. He's a rookie. He's a rookie right now, and he's put on some highlight plays. He's developed quickly. He looks good. How can you sit here and say they aren't stars. And then tell me what a star is. I mean, is it, what is it? Like, and how are you saying it about these players? Because again, I don't care if Cade Cunningham or Jaden Ivey are stars, as long as they start winning games. If they win games, I don't care what their title is to the rest of the league, because they'll be stars to me.
Yeah, like in the article, he basically said that the Pistons aren't in a position right now to draft for fit. It's kind of to his question is like, yeah, you're not going to draft Brandon Miller if you're at 2, because you've won 60 games in the past 3 seasons. Like, you need to draft best player available, figure out later, draft Scoot Henderson, because he could turn into a star. We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see what he does turn into, but most people think he will be a star guard. I think he will too.
Yeah,
but this is where I disagree with it. The Pistons have actually hit on Cade. They hit on Ivy. Now, if you're at 2, you draft Scoot, I'm not mad at it. He's the second best player out of this draft class. I'm not mad at it at all. But to kind of use the Philadelphia 76ers logic of, the Pistons haven't drafted any stars, like, dude, Cade Cunningham probably would have been an all-star this year if he didn't get hurt. I mean, he was averaging 27 and 8 on one leg. It's the recency bias with these media members, these draft experts. Like, yeah, I would draft Scoot since Cade and Ivy aren't stars.
Yeah,
like it's just it's such a closed-minded argument right now that I just sometimes when I'm reading these articles and I'm just like, dude, really, this is what we're doing. I don't get it, man. Like, I've always been draft best player available, but to sit here and say, they haven't hit on anything, I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, I completely disagree with it. It's just like that account saying the Pistons got lucky if James Wiseman trade was voided because they had, I don't know if Troy Weaver knew what he had in Jalen Duren. Like, dude, what? That was so stupid. It's the same thing with, I really respect what Sam Vecini does. I love his work, but I definitely disagree with him on this. And yeah, it's annoying, man. Just give these 2 players some more time before you say they're not stars or not good players, or Troy Weaver hasn't hit on some draft picks. Let's give it a little bit more time.
Yeah, I just kind of think it's, people haven't seen Cade Cunningham in a long time, and maybe they forget what a special player the kid is. In Jaden Ivey's development this year, the stuff that he's been doing over the past month and a half, I didn't think I would see until year 3. Yeah. His development, like, we could talk about that for a couple minutes, man. Like, his development is so fast this season that I didn't think I would see him, become this knockdown 3-point shooter. I didn't think it would be there yet. I didn't think I'd see him facilitate, just throw these dimes like a freaking fastball to these players. Like, it's incredible of how fast he's developed, and he still has 14, 15 games left, man. Like, I think I could see him being a superstar, and I said it last week. I'll say it again. I think he has all the qualities of being a superstar guard in this league. I know you said you don't see him being that kind of like that persona, having that personality to be a superstar, but I think he can kind of be that quiet, humble, smart star guard that, the NBA could market, because that kid is just so talented. Like, knock on him was he wasn't a good defender. Man, he's been trying on defense over the past month. I mean, like, he just understands it. Like, the game has slowed down for him. People were comping him to Russell Westbrook, and Westbrook still hasn't figured out how to slow down his game. Jaden Ivey's already figured it out in his rookie year. Like, that kid's just going to be special, man.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, just the way he knows how to change pace and attack defenses and draw them in and make the right play based on what they're giving him, but then also have the confidence to go out there and be the lead guard and run this team with, I mean, it's just been incredible the way he's been setting guys up, that chemistry he has with Wiseman on those lobs, but also that play where against Charlotte, where Wiseman sets the screen, and then Mark Williams, I believe it was Mark Williams, it might have been Nick Richards, where Jaden Ivey was able to pull them in because he had already hit a couple shots from the mid-range and then just goes over top. Dude, it's just the way the play recognition from him has been incredible. I thought we were just going to see a great athlete that showed us flashes his rookie year. And then the second year, we were going to start seeing the development of his jump shot. Then by year 3, we were going to start to see that confidence grow as being a lead guard and someone that could run a team. But we're getting it all in his rookie year. I think he's a star. this dude is just going to be incredible to watch over the next few seasons. It's going to be fun in Detroit, man. Just get your popcorn ready, man.
Like we talk about development all the time, and we talk about like well, maybe they can work on that next season, develop it. Like he's developing at such a fast rate that it's insane to watch. Like you watch Jaden Ivey in October and you watch him in March, completely different player.
Yeah.
Not even the same type of player. Like he's just the fact that the game is slowing down for him is scary. Because if he develops a mid-range jump shot and that three kind of stays around league average to close to 40%, dude, he could easily be a 20 and 10 guy.
It's going to be, I know. Oh, man. Dude, I think he could be like, this is someone I think we're going to see. He's going to be like 22. I'll say 22, 5, and like 4, but just great efficiency and good defense. I just think with Cade Cunningham still running on the wing with him and being his backcourt mate, we're not going to see like, we're not going to see a crazy amount of points per game for him because the team isn't set up that way. But these guys are just going to gel together. You're still going to see great individual performance, but the bigger overall picture is just to win games and, go ultimately to the championship and win it. And don't want to put that on their shoulders, but I like the way this team is developing, man. And just these players, man, it gets me excited, man. It really puts a smile on my face to see this team. And, the way, even though we've been losing, just the way they've been developing, it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, I know some fans are really frustrated with the wins not coming.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I want to win too. I think both of us want the Pistons to win. Like, we literally have a segment called Pistons Player of the Win. I don't think we've done it in a freaking month. Like, we haven't done it in a month because we haven't won too many games this season. But I think they're positioned to have long-term success. I've said that for a while. Like, you build through the draft, you're going to have long-term success and, be in playoff contention for the next 5 to 6 years. I think the wins will come, and we've been preaching patience, and you got to build through the draft. You got to get your books clean, and the books are getting cleaner. Doesn't help that it seems like every other year we're waving and stretching somebody else. But hey, I think the wins will come soon.
Definitely. Yeah. And speaking of wins, we didn't have any, so we have no Pistons Talk Player of the Win this week. Sucks for us, but I think this is 3 podcasts in a row without a Pistons Talk Player of the Win. But let's look ahead to the schedule. We have Pacers at Pistons, Pistons at Wizards, Nuggets at Pistons, and then the Miami Heat at the Pistons next Sunday. We said 2 wins out of the next 14. Do we see any of these wins coming this week?
No,
dude. I hope it's not an annihilation like it was last night against the Pacers. Other than that third quarter, bro, that was just embarrassing. I know the game was close with it was just only a 6-point loss, but Isaiah Jackson was doing whatever he wanted on the glass, man. Isn't it kind of weird too seeing Tyrese Halliburton? I know he's hurt, but he's wearing sweats on the sideline and he's watching Killian Hayes play. It's crazy.
I know a lot of fans are like, yeah, Killian only went off because Tyrese wasn't playing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. It's just crazy. But how many wins? Do you think they get any this week? You said no?
0.
Yeah, there's not even a matchup. Do you even think Nikola Jokic plays against the Pistons on Thursday night?
I think they're still the 1 seed, which I called that, by the way.
Yeah, you did.
Probably not, but I still think they get obliterated. You got a lot of former Pistons. You got Reggie Jackson, Ish Smith, KCP, Bruce Brown. Got the Detroit Nuggets out there.
The Grand Rapids Gold for sure with all those other players. The Heat. I hope we see Bam Adebayo. I want to see him go against Jalen Duren and James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley if he's healthy. But other than that, there's not really too many matchups. Hopefully we get Ivy at some point this week. We know he's not playing today, tomorrow, or tonight, if you're watching or if you're listening. So, yeah, we won't see him against the Pacers. But, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they get a win this week. So,
yeah, I think most Pistons fans are just to the point where they're spinning Tankathon every day. They don't want the Pistons to win.
We shall see. Do we have any Q&A questions?
We do. Give me a second. I did start a couple during the podcast. This comes from Tony. Tony always has really great questions. Question: Thoughts on this trade idea? Bojan and Burks to Brooklyn for Joe Harris, Royce O'Neal, and two multi-position 3-and-D vets off the bench.
Bojan and Burks to Brooklyn for Joe Harris and Royce O'Neal, two multi-position 3-and-D vets. So we're getting 4 players, or is he saying that Joe Harris and Royce O'Neal are the two multi-position 3-and-D vets?
Yeah, basically.
How much is Joe Harris is always hurt? I actually do like Joe Harris's game, and plus we do look a little similar with the facial hair and the hair, so I got to root for my guy. I like Royce O'Neal's game too. Just he attacks offensively and defensively. He's kind of like that backup guard, like I was talking about earlier. Like he's a little bit lengthier, a little bit beefier, gives you some more size. But I'd rather not trade Bojan and Burks. I like both their games. I think those two are going to be pieces next season and start contributing to the win. So, no, I'd have to pass on that trade. But thanks for the question, Tony.
Yeah, I'd probably pass on the trade too. Not to say it's not a decent trade. I just think Burks and Bojan, I don't want to say they're better than Joe Harris and Royce O'Neal. I think Royce O'Neal is just a glue guy. He's kind of like Omarui in a sense where, he's a good defender. But I think if the Pistons were to trade both of those guys, they might be able to net something a little bit better, in my opinion. Not to say it's not a good trade package. It's just I think that would kind of be on the low end of their peak value, in my opinion.
Okay.
This is a question that we've probably answered a couple times, but for all the new subscribers, we're getting new subscribers each and every day, so we do appreciate that. We're at 12,000 strong, by the way, so shout out to you guys.
You guys are awesome.
This comes from Sean Don Sports. How do y'all feel about Cade at small forward position?
I mean, I like him at, honestly, any other spot. I think he's big enough to defend most threes in the NBA. And I think, if he's going up against, someone like LeBron, they're going to throw their bodies at him. So I don't feel bad about, that matchup for him. I still think he'd be more of like a point forward anyways. And even with the development of Jaden Ivey as a lead guard and his facilitating, I still think the playmaking will be secondary to Cade. I think Cade will ultimately dictate where the ball goes on most offensive possessions, and he's going to control the pace of the game with Ivey, probably being, taking more of the bulk as a scorer, but taking a backseat as a playmaker.
Yeah, I think, to me, I think Cade will either always play point guard or shooting guard. Not because, he wants to. It's because it's what the coaching staff needs him to do.
Yeah.
Because I think he could play small forward if he wanted to, but I think your small forwards are either going to be Bojan, whatever you get in free agency or the draft, possibly, or Isaiah Livers. I just think like he could play it, but I just don't see him ever playing it. I mean, maybe if you draft Scoot and you want to kind of experiment with that, but he's got the body for it. A lot of people compare him to Jason Tatum in a sense, but I just think he's better suited as being more of a point guard or a shooting guard just because he does have a height advantage over most of the, point guards in the NBA.
Yeah, and it makes sense to have your 3 and 4s just being floor spacers and guys that play defense or cut to the basket. Have those two positions available to play off of Cade and Ivey. You got your 2 ball handlers in the backcourt, your guys that can control pace and, facilitate and get guys involved. Have those 3, 4, and 5s, do everything else for those 2.
Yeah, he's capable. I just don't see the Pistons ever doing that. Unless they're kind of like thin on small forwards because of injuries. But that's like worst case scenario.
Yep, give us
this is a question that, I see this all the time during the draft, and it pisses a lot of people off. But do you see Woj and Shams stop tweeting draft picks before they announce it on TV?
Dude, I hate this more than anything. I hate when they do this before the draft picks. I don't see it stopping It's not going to stop until we stop liking these tweets and stop retweeting them. That's the problem. There are other accounts out there, other basketball accounts like on Instagram or on Twitter. They want to be quote unquote first to report the news after these two guys. And so it's not going to stop. They want those likes and they want those shares. So it's never going to stop, man. And I hate it.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. Like you even saw it kind of last year with the NFL draft. They started like kind of doing the same thing where like they're like announcing draft picks. Like if I'm watching the draft, I don't want to get a notification on my phone, Woj beating the NBA draft by like 30 minutes. Because that's what it seems like. Because the NBA draft takes so long.
It'd be funny if they did this at the beginning of the NBA draft. They had like with Nerf guns, they had a hunt for Woj and Shams, and then they just like tied their arms behind their back so they couldn't tweet out the news.
Yeah,
you can watch their cell phone screen, all the notifications coming in. Pure torture.
I don't get what's the point of having an NBA draft if you're just going to spoil it. Like I don't understand it. Like I want to watch the NBA draft. I don't want to get a notification from ESPN saying, "Oh, the Pistons drafted this guy." I was like, dude, let me watch the draft. I want to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I don't want to turn my phone off. I want to react with all the other fans out there for those picks. I don't want to react early. I want to react when they happen in that moment. That's what I want. But Woj, Shams, they ruined it for us.
Sorry about that. A little tired.
Oh,
this comes from Nick's Battle. It's a draft question. If we fall 4, do we take Amin Thompson?
You were saying Asur is the better one of these two, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're at 4, I think Asur Thompson would be the Thompson brother that I would take.
Who's the better shooter of the two?
Asur.
Okay, and is Amin considered the better athlete? Who's the one that like looks like Sean Marion when they run and jump?
That's Amin.
Oh, okay, yeah. See, that's the guy I like, man. But he is, again, like I said, man. If you can't contribute day one, don't come to Detroit.
Yeah. When I was reading that KOC mock draft, he kind of comped Amin Thompson to Zion.
How does that make sense?
I don't know. He's like shades of Zion. I was like what shades? Like the slim Zion or like?
Is
like,
there a slim Zion?
There? No, he was slim before he got to New Orleans. He's eating gumbo every day. It doesn't help.
He's always been big. Like he's a muscular dude. He looked like a man child in high school. It was unfair. Crazy workout he was on, man. But
yeah.
That doesn't make any sense for a comp. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would take Amin, but I want a guy that can shoot, man. I don't want to draft a 3-and-D guy that can't shoot, man. I don't want that. Yeah. But Amin does. Yeah. He floats and he glides. He looks like Sean Marion, and I've always loved Sean Marion, dude. I've always loved them.
Ugly ass jumper, but hell of an athlete.
That's dude. 20 and like he averaged 20 and 10. He's one of the best players of the 2000s that doesn't get talked about. Such an underrated player, man.
Yeah, I remember one account was just like tag someone that's got an ugly jumper, and someone tagged Sean Marion, and he like went off and bitched him out.
Dude, he made what is it like $100 million or something in his career? Yeah. That jumper got him to the NBA. Well,
yeah, I think people still tell him how ugly that jump shot is.
Dude, I would. Why not? I told Mateen Cleaves that he couldn't shoot when I met him. It was fun. He laughed about it, and then he showed me his national championship ring.
That's funny. This one comes from Ryan. Shout out to Ryan, and my computer just wants to give me a weather forecast as I'm trying to read these questions. I'm good. I know it's going to snow. You don't got to tell me. Are we satisfied with Bojan as the starting small forward with a lesser tier? Example, Livers. Small forward off the bench, or should we be looking at two-way small forwards with Bojan being the first off the bench, playing good minutes, 25 or so?
I would like Bojan coming off the bench. I think his game I think he's a good starter, but the way he looks everybody off, and he's always hunting for his own shot, makes him a really good 6-man. Yeah, I would rather, and he's not a two-way player. I would love to find a real 3-and-D sniper at the 3 or the 4 if it's not Isaiah Livers. I mean, I would rather have Bojan come off the bench. I think that's a good role for him, even if he's not averaging 20. If he's averaging like 14 or 16 next season off the bench and the Pistons are winning, that's a win, man.
Yeah, I think to your question, Ryan, I think that's where most fans are at. They're like, Boyan's a good player, but you don't want to play him heavy minutes. Like in Utah, when they were making their playoff runs, he wasn't playing like heavy minutes. But since we're in Detroit, we're not winning a whole lot. You kind of have to play him in the high 30s. And I think Livers is showcasing that, he can, play around 20, 25 minutes. And he's been playing really well as of late. So I wouldn't rule it out to see Bojan off the bench going into next year, depending on, the two-way small forwards that we could possibly sign in free agency or possibly draft, because this draft has a ton of wings. This is a wing-heavy draft. But I'm kind of like with him, like I don't want to see Bojan play 30, 35 minutes. I just think he's not effective when he's playing that many minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I've been saying about Marvin Bagley, that Marvin Bagley is valuable in 22 minutes per game more than he is in 28 minutes per game, because they're just both great offensive weapons, and they don't really do much of anything else. So, I mean, Marvin Bagley recently has been doing a little bit more before the injury, but you know what I mean. The Bojan is just one of those guys. He's going to look good in 20 minutes a game or 30 minutes a game, but he's more valuable to you in less minutes per game because, he can score in bunches, man.
Yeah, I do think he will play up the bench eventually. I just don't know when it'll be. And we don't know how serious the Achilles injury is or not. I mean, it could be affecting him, but I don't know. I think Livers, to me, is a big reason why we traded Sadiq, because there's just so much there where he's, giving you solid defense and he can hit threes just like Sadiq did. So there is something there with Isaiah Livers, and I know Lance is happy for me to say that.
Hell yeah. And I mean, dude, he caught that lob and he was making those cuts he was making. Like, he can move well without the ball. I like Isaiah Livers games. He's showing flashes of what you wish Sadiq Bey was doing, without the ball in his hands, instead of trying to go, even though Isaiah Livers does give you a healthy dose of trying to take his man off the dribble a lot. Like, sometimes you're just like, dude, what are you doing? But yeah, I'm happy for Isaiah Livers, dude. I love watching him ball out.
Yeah, same here. Like I said, he's been putting some really good games together, and I'm happy for him. Just praying he stays healthy.
Same.
Yeah, don't want to see him on the bench chained up like Marvin Bagley. That's another question from Tony. It's a free agency question. Question: what are your thoughts on Detroit going after Gary Trent Jr. this summer? He's unrestricted.
I like that because I think, he's, again, one of those guys. He has decent size in the backcourt where you could play him with Cade and Ivy, and he could spread the floor. He's not doesn't have great size to be in 3 and D, but he's a guy that can hit shots and create a little for himself. And I don't think he takes anything away from Jaden Ivey or Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, I think Gary Trent, to me, I've always been a fan. Damn, I have him in my fantasy team. Like, that's how big of a fan I am, because I know that guy can knock down 3-point shots. I think if the Pistons didn't have Alec Burks, I think he would be a guy that the Pistons do target. Not to say that there isn't room for both a Alec Burks and a Gary Trent, but I just think they're really going to focus on small forwards that can hit threes and defend, because if you look at the Pistons roster, we're pretty set on bigs, I think. We got our guards, but we really don't have those small forwards that can hit 3-point shots at defend. The only 3-and-D wing on this team right now is Isaiah Livers, and we haven't really seen too much out of Amarui in terms of, nailing that 3-point shot, but there is potential there. So I think, for me, I think the Pistons don't look at Gary Trent. Not to say he's a bad player. It's just I think their focus is just going to be on 3-and-D wings this summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a personal preference for me with Gary Trent. Like, I don't know if the Pistons go after him, because you made a great point about Alec Burke playing that spot. You got Jaden Ivey, like we're talking about, and Cade. Who knows what they do with RJ Hampton? And then you're right. We need more size at those 3 and those 4 spots, and we need more shooting. So Gary Trent provides the shooting, just doesn't provide the size.
Yeah, for sure. Another draft question. This does come from Christian. He asked, what do you think the Pistons' next move should be if we get Wembanyama?
If they do draft Wemby, are you talking about like what they should do in this upcoming draft, or
probably free agency? I'm assuming.
I think it's still what we were talking about. Go after more floor spacers. Open up some space for Ivy and Cade. Open up space for Wemby, and then. But I think it's more of a question: what do you do with all the other bigs? Because I think if the Pistons do draft Wemby, the conversation comes down to, okay, who we keep in Wiseman, Marvin Bagley, or Isaiah Stewart. Because even though Stern hasn't been starting the last couple games because he's coming back from an injury, he is still the starting 5 in my opinion. And I think Wemby, if he does come to Detroit, he plays the 4 because he's skilled enough to do that.
Yeah, he said in the interview he doesn't want to play center.
Yeah.
So I'm not really too surprised by that. I think there's a world where this is absolutely crazy that you could put him at small forward. You could put him at small forward.
That's interesting, man. His handle's good, but it has to be tighter though to play on the perimeter in the NBA.
Yeah. Like, what do I think the next move should be if the Pistons do win the lottery and draft Wembanyama? I think the plan should still stay the same. Go out and go get more 3-and-D wings. I'll just keep saying it. I'm just gonna have a Post-it note on my head. That's what you need. You want to get into the playoffs next year. You want to win more basketball games. You need wings to help out the Pistons on defense because that is the biggest weakness of this basketball team right now. We just don't have the wings.
Good question, though. I just think you find suitors, though, for one of the big guys up front.
For sure. We got a question from Banks. Always good to see his questions. Question: if the Pistons end up in the lottery next season, what do you think about the rebuild then?
The retooling, or what did they call it again? The restoring. Yeah. What do I think about it? That would probably be the first time I would think like, okay, this is kind of a failure. Like you can't. It's good. It's good in theory to have all these young players on your roster, but you eventually have to make really difficult decisions with this. So I would think that would be the first time where I'd be like, yeah, we maybe he has to figure this out. I don't want to go into next season with a high draft pick. I just don't. This is the last year I want to be drafting in the top 5.
I'll just say now, next year's draft is probably the worst draft class I've seen in 10 years.
Oh, it's really that bad?
It's terrible. Like, the reason why Bronny James is a top 10 prospect is because, not taking anything away from him, this draft class going into next season is historically bad.
Okay.
It's terrible. Okay. I don't think the Pistons aren't going to mess around and try to, like what they're doing right now. They're not going to, sit half their roster for a draft pick. They're going all in this summer.
Yeah.
They're not messing around. You're going to see, Coach Casey, because he will be here next year. Sorry to disappoint you guys. Saying, we're trying to push for the playoffs. We're trying to win. Like Troy, it'll probably come out of Troy's mouth. Yeah, we want to make the play-in. We want to make the playoffs. Like the Pistons don't want to keep trying to rebuild and add talent and do all this stuff because they've been doing it. This will be going into their 4th draft. They started, rebuilding in 2020 during the Killian draft. I think to your point, they've added enough talent. This will be 4 drafts. You're going to have more cap space. Everyone's going to get a year older. Everyone's going to, want to win. None of these players want to win 15 games a year. I mean, James Wiseman had a quote the other day saying, I'm trying to win. I came from Golden State. We don't lose. Like, I'm not used to this. So, players want to win. Trust me. I don't even think we even have to think about this because I don't think it's going to be a reality.
I mean, so even after the rebuild and this team is set in place, you think Troy Weaver will still be willing and dealing draft picks? Like still trying to move up in drafts if he likes a guy?
I mean, if he really likes a guy, like he really liked Duran, yeah. Like I said, I just see this offseason of being a very important offseason. Probably the most important offseason of Troy Weaver's career.
Yeah,
Um,
'cause
just
he's
just
right.
just be just because so many fans right now. I've muted so many people on Twitter because it just gets to the point where it's like I could post a highlight and like who cares, we suck.
Oof.
Like fans are just sick of losing, and I get it. I think there's a lot of pressure on him to build a playoff team. We haven't been to the playoffs since 2018, and it's 2023. It'll go into 2024. Haven't won a playoff series since 2008.
Mm.
And not to mention is like Little Caesars Arena has actually been pretty consistent this year with attendance.
Yeah.
Like the city wants a winner. Like they want a winner really bad. Like Pistons fans want to see the Pistons playing meaningful basketball in March and April.
100%.
They don't want to say I'm not going to the game because we're not playing. Me and you don't want to sit up here and hype up two-way players, like we want to talk about playoff
Yes.
matchups down the line, obviously. I do think it'll happen this year. It's just we've been preaching patience, but I think this is the summer where we actually make moves. We actually, sign veterans that make sense. We're not, signing Mason Plumlee. You know, you're actually getting guys that are going to contribute to winning basketball and not just kind of eat the cap space up. You're not going to have a Kojo on your roster next year, dribbling 1 versus 5, and we're all pissed off saying, why does this guy get tied? What kind of dirt does he have on Coach Casey? Like, what is this shit? Like,
Oh, gosh.
I just think we're going to get veterans to help us, win more games and try to get back into the playoff hunt.
Oh, 100%. That's what I think is going to happen. Like you're saying, this is the most important offseason for Troy Weaver. I think trading Sadiq Bey at the deadline was an eye-opening move for everybody that this dude means business. It's not, oh, we're going to wait and see what happens with all these guys. We're going to make moves that are going to help this future, and we're going to start winning games next season. It's it's important, man. It really is.
Now, this is a question I got from C. Gerald. Do you think Weaver would look about Chauncey if Portland fired him?
No, I think the next head coach. I mean, we both want Jerry Stackhouse, but bro, I mean, Rex Kalaman, he's always talking to the sideline reporters during the games, like he always has the clipboard in hands. I feel like we're probably going to get a like what 2 seasons of Rex Kalaman as the head coach after Dwayne Casey. Kind of feels that way. I feel like this bench, this coaching unit is going to be intact, but it's going to be Dwayne Casey in the front office and Rex Kalaman sitting in the big seat.
Yeah, I don't think Rex Kalaman will ever have a head coaching job for the Detroit Pistons.
You don't? Okay.
No, I just think they interview assistant coaches because obviously Coach Casey doesn't want to answer questions while he's coaching. I mean, you see Jerome Allen answer it once in a while.
Yeah,
I just think they get the assistant coaches for the interviews.
I just thought like Rex Kalaman was just basically like kind of being groomed. Like I feel like he gets a shot at some point because he is the head coach of the Armenian national team. But we'll see. I mean, unless you know something that I don't, but I'd rather have Jerry Stackhouse as the head coach.
But to answer Gerald's question, if Portland does fire Chauncey, I think that there would be interest from the organization. But a big reason why Chauncey Billups isn't working for the Detroit Pistons organization is money, right? And it's nothing to do with like, oh well, Chauncey wanted to be a GM. And Pistons like, we'll let you be an assistant GM. Chauncey wanted to be a GM right off the bat with no experience.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Gores and the Pistons organization were kind of hand shy about that. And he did win the Pistons a championship, and it kind of didn't have the same privilege as Joe Dumars did when Mr. Davidson asked him to be a GM. But I think there would be definite interest, but Chauncey's got to do better than what he's doing right now. If he misses the playoffs, I don't think Tom Gores or the Pistons organization would want to bring him in for a Dwayne Casey replacement. Like we've said Jerry Stackhouse. One of my friends said, Juwan Howard's doing so bad he might get a Pistons job. I was just like, man, don't curse that on me. I don't want to see Juwan Howard coaching the Pistons.
I don't even feel like Chauncey Billups is that good of a coach right now. I just feel like he might be average at best. I don't know. I don't really feel that great about him as a head coach. I don't know about you, but I mean, I'll root for him because he's a former Piston, but I don't know. I mean, if he was, I don't even know. He just doesn't seem that great in Portland right now.
I think it's more of a Portland issue. I don't really think Chauncey's a bad coach. I just kind of think it's personnel. It's they've tried to. It reminds me of the Pistons a few years ago when we just kept trying to run it back, and it's just like eventually you're gonna have to just blow it up and rebuild. Like, Dame wants to be with Portland for the rest of his life, but like at some point you're just gonna have to say, we're never winning a chip. I think their best opportunity is when him and CJ McCollum were on the team together. Not to say that their other shooting guard isn't great. He is. It's just I think the window's kind of passed with Dame and the Blazers.
They messed up getting rid of LaMarcus Aldridge. That they should. I mean, I know it wasn't just them getting rid of him. I know he made the move to go to San Antonio, but man, you could have had him for a few more prime years and then Dame taking over as the team. Like if there was, I feel like that would have been your best opportunity along with CJ McCollum. But I felt like they really tried to go with that small backcourt way too long. They should have blew that up just a couple seasons in. You were never going to win with those two in the backcourt. I don't know. I just don't think Dame's ever going to win a championship in Portland.
Yeah, I've said that for a while, and I'm glad so many people are on the Stackhouse wagon. Like I kind of I put my flag in it early in the season, and everyone's just jumping on the bandwagon now.
Good. I think he's got a few guys to the NBA from, being a college coach. Saban Lee was one of them.
Yeah.
I think Scottie Pippen Jr. played for him. I could be wrong about that, but I thought it was Scottie Pippen Jr. But yeah, he knows his players, and he won a G League championship. I saw you tweet that out the other day.
And he just won SEC co-coach of the year.
Dude, good for him filling up that trophy case.
It's funny, like you see people like giving him praise just like as a X and O guy. Like he's just coaching Vanderbilt at such a high level right now, and it's like he's not getting like these 5-star recruits that Duke gets either. I think that's what makes it so impressive.
Yeah, he's developing guys. That's the nice thing. That's what I'm talking about. You got Saban Lee. He was a second-round draft pick, but he was there. I believe Jerry Stackhouse was his coach for 2 seasons, maybe just 1. But, Saban Lee had the ability. He just needed to be developed and coached up and told what to do to get to the NBA, and Jerry Stackhouse helped him find that path.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny, everyone's saying, North Carolina. Did you know this is the first year of them not making the tournament in like 30 plus years?
I knew they were having a bad year, which is kind of surprising because last year they were in the national championship game with pretty much the same roster, which is nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Tar Heel fan. Like, you asked me, are you a Michigan or Michigan State fan? Like, no, Tar Heel fan.
Dude, I love the UConn Huskies, man. Emeka Okafor, Ben Gordon, Rudy Gay, Marcus Williams. That was my squad.
For sure. We'll do one more question, then we'll wrap it up because we've almost been on for 2 hours. And you guys have been amazing just watching this. We've had like a steady 80, 85 people watching since we started. So shout out to you guys for watching. This question does come from Christian again. So shout out to Christian. Do you think Casey has some blame for the Pistons' performance this season, or is this just a result of injuries, roster construction, and player experience?
That is hilarious because this is something I was thinking about today. And I was actually going to save this topic for next week. This is crazy. I think it has more to do with the injuries than Casey's performance because we talked about all podcasts, we've seen the development of Jaden Ivey. We've seen the development of Jalen Duren. I mean, Wiseman for a few games has looked pretty good. Marvin Bagley coming back from injury was getting double-doubles and putting effort up on, rebounding the ball. Like, he's giving us effort. So I think it has more to do with injuries. I mean, I don't think the Pistons would be a play-in team even with Cade Cunningham healthy, but I do think they would probably have more than 20 wins at this point of the season. So I'm going to go ahead and say injuries is the biggest result of a poor season.
I'm going to say that I've listened to every press conference, and the one word that always comes up is development. I think they're prioritizing development over wins, because I think they just want to see what they have. Because if I've always said if they were trying to win, they would have played all their vets.
Yeah, Alex Burke would have started games.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did as of late, like over the last month and a half. But he's out with a foot injury, whatever. So I would say that the Pistons have prioritized more development over winning, and I would blame it on injuries also because they've had bad luck. Like, who knew Cade Cunningham was going to be out for the rest of the season? I didn't. Who knew Marvin Bagley? It seems like every time he gets back, gets injured. Like, guy can't catch a break, literally. And I think it is roster construction too. I think there are some players on this team that don't really make a whole lot of sense if you're trying to win. If you want to win, there's going to be a lot of faces on this roster that aren't here next season. Exactly. And player experience too. This is, I think, the third or fourth youngest team in the NBA. I think everything you asked, you can check a box, because most teams that win are veteran teams. You're not the third or fourth youngest team in the NBA and you're making the playoffs. It just doesn't really happen too often unless you're, LeBron James, freaking, carrying a bunch of scrubs to 67 wins. But I mean, other than that, like, you don't really see it too often. But great question, Christian. I think it's just a mixture of everything he did ask.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think they were a play-in team. I don't think they were a playoff team. I just thought, with a healthy Cade Cunningham, you're probably looking at like 22 wins at this point of the season, maybe 23, maybe a peak of like 25 or 26, but it's just, yeah, I mean, I can't blame Casey for all of it because Jaden Ivey has looked really good. Dern has looked really good as well. So, yeah, it's hard for me just to put it all on Casey.
Yeah, for sure. But we do appreciate you guys, watching this podcast on a Sunday night. Like I said, got 83 people in here right now, so we do really appreciate it. But why don't you tell the people where they can find the podcast, how they can support the podcast, and where to follow you on Twitter?
Thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk Podcast. Do us a favor, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, and then go to Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Lance Caparosi. I mean, I got 873 of you guys. Give me to 875. That's all I ask. You can also follow Anthony at Pistons Talk across all social media platforms. Promise you, it is totally worth it. And then after you do all that, do the most important thing and tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.